Here's what's coming up on the program today. At least 46 people killed in a bus crash in Bulgaria. Officials in Wisconsin are seeking to charge the driver who plowed a Christmas parade on Sunday with 5 counts of intentional homicide. Plus, Ethiopia's Prime Minister offers to lead a physical fight against the Tigrayan rebels headed for the capital, Addis Ababa. Well, welcome to the program today. I'm Amarachi Ubani. 46, the number counted so far from the terrible bus crash and fire that occurred in western Bulgaria earlier today. It was a bus full of tourists returning from a trip to Istanbul, Turkey. It rammed a crash barrier on a motorway southwest of the capital, Sofia, at 2 a.m. local time.
Bulgarian officials say the incident happened on the motorway at about 2 a.m. local time near the village of Bosnek, southwest of the capital, Sofia. The bus was registered in North Macedonia, and at least 45 people are known to have lost their lives, including 12 children. On board the bus had been mostly North Macedonian tourists returning from Turkey. The cause of the crash was unclear, but the bus appeared to have hit a highway barrier either before or after it caught fire. Bulgaria's Interior Minister, Boyko Rashkov, vowed to carry out an investigation.
Not everyone can stand such a picture. The picture is terrifying. The details of this tragedy will be investigated. It is hard to look there, hard to look. I do not know if we should go into the details at these early hours. Maybe we should leave it for a later hour. In my experience, I have never seen anything like this.
7 people who leapt from the burning bus were rushed to hospital in Sofia and are said to be in stable condition. The accident happened on Strauma Highway, about 28 miles west of Sofia, around 2 a.m. North Macedonia's foreign minister said the coach party was returning from Skopje from a weekend holiday trip to Istanbul.
I'll check out this video of migrants near the Belarusian border with Poland trying to warm themselves around a mobile stove as they cook food. Activities seem pretty normal at the camp today. Women trying to do some laundry also, using water from tanks drawn up in the grounds surrounding the warehouse. These migrants are among those moved in from informal camps at the Polish-Belarus border after Belarusian authorities began to clear them on November 18, the same day that the first repatriation flights for months took off for Iraq. About 120 migrants left the country on Monday, and more would follow today, according to the Belarus Interior Ministry. The EU insists the border issue is an attempt to destabilize the bloc. And for other parts of Europe, Ukraine today received 2 refitted former U.S. Coast Guard vessels meant to reinforce the country's navy, just as Russia masses thousands of troops and military equipment on the border between the 2 countries. The Ukrainian Navy had announced that the boats had arrived at the Black Sea port of Odessa. The naval commander said the country appreciated the contribution of the United States to deter the armed aggression of the Russian Federation against Ukraine. The vessels are part of more than $2.5 billion in military assistance Ukraine has received from the U.S. since 2014, when Russia illegally annexed the province of Crimea, setting off a war that has claimed more than 14,000 lives. Russia, however, says any decision by the United States to send military advisors and more hardware to Ukraine would further fuel tensions between the two. U.S. media had reported, and we just said it, Washington considering sending advisors and new equipment, including weaponry, to Ukraine at a time when Russia has built up forces near the border. But a Kremlin spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, said at a press conference, "We are seriously concerned by Ukraine's actions on the line of contact in eastern Ukraine and the possibility of a Ukrainian decision to use force there." He also said that the Kremlin considers new sanctions imposed by the United States in connection with the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline illegal and wrong. Monday's sanctions targeted Russia-linked Transadria Limited and its vessel. Washington opposes the $11 billion pipeline, which runs under the Baltic Sea to bypass Ukraine and carry gas from Russia's Arctic region to Germany. We're in the United States now. Officials in the state of Wisconsin are seeking to charge the driver who plowed into a Christmas parade on Sunday with 5 counts of intentional homicide. A driver has been identified as 39-year-old Darrell Edward Brooks. He killed 5 people on Sunday, aged between 52 and 81, and injured 48 others, including young children, in the town of Waukesha. Police say he was fleeing a domestic dispute when he plowed into the crowd. They also say the incident was not an act of terrorism. The victims have also been identified and include members of the Milwaukee Dancing Grannies, who are a regular fixture in the city's parades. Now, overnight, hundreds of people attended a candlelight vigil in Waukesha to honor the victims of the attack. A number of them recall the incident, many still shaken, understandably. Darrell Edward, the 39-year-old driver, has a criminal history, though. He was last released from custody after posting a $1,000 cash bond on November 11, an amount the Milwaukee County District Attorney's Office said was inappropriately low in the light of the nature of recent charges.
I was taking video of them. We were watching the band, the school band. We saw them pass by. We saw the grannies. Also, we waved at them. We were just ready for the parade. We were all having a good time. It was just a wonderful moment that before. We were around the middle, towards the end of the parade, and we had just gotten on to the beginning of the parade when we heard the honking, and the vehicle just passed right behind me, and another mom almost running us over, and we saw how the vehicle just kept going.
Our correspondent in Washington, Maria Bird, has been following this story. Maria, just wondering if the president has said anything regarding the incident on Sunday and Washington's response to this.
Washington obviously is going to be definitely addressing this. I think that we are just hours away from some of new information regarding this. We know that later on this afternoon, the formal charges will be made, and Darrell Brooks will be going into the court later this afternoon. So we can expect to see a more formal response probably after that occurs later today.
He had been let out on a $1,000 cash bond, and that was on November 11th. In light of what's been going on, I'm sure that people are upset about, the fact that, such a low low bond was posted by him. But how does that compare to, what happened on Sunday and people's reactions to that?
It's as you listen, hearing and rehashing exactly what occurred. It's just heartbreaking to imagine families. We are entering the holiday season here in the U.S. Thanksgiving is only 2 days away, and so many families are heartbroken. And to think that this individual who created this horrific event, you talk about 5 people killed, 48 people injured, and even some children. And obviously, the dancing grannies were one of the highlights of that event, and so many of them being tragically killed in this situation. It is clear that at this time, the American people as a whole are really hurting regarding this, and are questioning whether or not the police department took this seriously. When he actually was ran over his, I believe it was his former girlfriend, someone he had a child with, and the police even saw tire tracks on the woman's left pant leg. So this is, I think, a case where I think that many people are asking the police, asking the court system, how was he allowed to be in public? And, after he had already had such a terrible incident on November the 2nd, and we were, not even 20 days removed from that incident, and he's able to create such a devastating event for so many.
Yeah, and Maria, so the police is not treating this as an act of terrorism. Uh, what are they describing it as?
They're saying that he left a domestic dispute prior to him intentionally, what they are claiming is intentionally running into individuals at the parade and continuing to drive through that parade. And they're saying that they're not even claiming it domestic terrorism. And so I guess what they're looking at is really some of the things that occur prior to him driving into the actual parade event, and that it was not intended to harm those individuals of the parade, but the intentions were as a result of an earlier incident. But again, I would say we need to keep watching, because I would not be surprised if in the coming days or even later today we hear that this is not only an intentional case of running into individuals, but this is also one of potentially domestic terrorism.
Yeah, indeed, and things could change very quickly. So this is pretty much a cut and dried case. I mean, the police, that's the appearance the police gives it. So if Brooks is charged with intentional homicide, what will that mean for him, and what will be the punitive actions that follow?
Well, you're going to see he will definitely be having probably a case with a jury. He will be detained most likely up until that time happens. Then the five intentional homicide charges will be brought forth. The court case will carry through. And, there's life imprisonment typically, which is one of the more extreme ends of potentially what he could be sentenced with. And then the lesser charges from there. But I would say that you're probably going to be seeing a lot more conversations around life imprisonment for this action.
Maria, just before you go, well, I'm about to read this story about Rittenhouse and his acquittal. He's spoken to the press in the U.S. Just days after he was acquitted. And, with the emotions high across the United States about, racial violence and, the fact that he killed people, and then now this happening. Give us a sense of what the temperature is like in the United States.
The temperature in the U.S. as it relates to race relations, I think it has, lifted a wound. I think that has been there. I think many people, even though very different, but they're thinking back to George Floyd, and this is, I think, one area that has not been healed, has not been rectified. I think the real issue is not the semantics of the case, but the real issue is compassion for people that have been killed. And you hear Americans mentioning the judge not even using the term victims for those who were killed. Some of the very clear, I think, what has been noted as potentially racially biased conversations and terminologies, I think, is really where many Americans are beginning to question and to think that an 18-year-old that was videotaped clearly holding a weapon and killing individuals is not being at all held accountable. I think that is the real question, is the value, especially of Black lives in America. And this, you will continue to see, I think, more conversations around this. Obviously, Rittenhouse, it will now go home. Will there be appeals about this case? Potentially so. But I think this is another moment where I think many Americans are holding their breath, and they are beginning to question, where has the race relation in America grown, and are we still in a place that we were 2 or 3 years ago, or have we made any steps forward?
So many questions, Maria, and so few answers. Thanks again for joining us on the program. More
Thank you.
on Kyle Rittenhouse. He speaks to the press in the United States days after his acquittal. Plus, the 1 million lights giving Copenhagen's Tivoli Park all the feels this Christmas. Stay with us. Welcome back to the program. More on Kyle Rittenhouse, the 18-year-old young man who shot dead two Americans during in Kenosha, Wisconsin last year. Rittenhouse recently was acquitted of shooting the two men dead. when the protests turned violent in Kenosha, Wisconsin in August last year. He's spoken about his actions that night. During an interview with Fox News in the United States, Rittenhouse said he was there at the protest to help anybody who needed it. Jurors found the 18-year-old not guilty on all charges, 2 counts of homicide, 1 count of attempted homicide for wounding a third man, and 2 counts of recklessly endangering safety in protests marred by arson, rioting and looting. Rittenhouse broke down sobbing after the verdict and collapsed to the floor before being held back into his chair, his hands shaking. His mother also wept. The decision by the jury reignited fierce debate about gun rights and the boundaries of self-defense in the United States.
I'm not a racist person. I support the BLM movement. I support peacefully demonstrating. It wasn't Kyle Rittenhouse on trial in Wisconsin. It was the right to self-defense on trial. Right. And if I was convicted, no one would ever be privileged to defend their life against attackers. I was there just to help anybody that needed, and shockingly, the only people I helped that night were rioters. This is something that I wish never would have happened, but it did, and we can't change that. But how polarized it became is absolutely sickening. Yeah. Like, right or left, people using me for a cause that should never have been used as a cause.
And to the crisis in the Horn of Africa, Ethiopia specifically, where apparently Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is preparing to go to war with the rebels, set to be approaching the capital, Addis Ababa. Mr. Ahmed says he will go himself to the front line to face them. That's much he said on social media. The Prime Minister has the rank of Lieutenant Colonel in the army and fought in the 1998 to 2000 border war between Ethiopia and Eritrea. Mr. Abiy's announcement on Monday came as Tigray People's Liberation Front forces said they were advancing on at least 4 fronts towards Addis Ababa. Reports say the Ethiopian government has denied this. The tone of the Prime Minister's speech, they say, carried both an air of defiance and, to some, of desperation. Uganda says that the 7 suspects have been killed. 7 suspects have been killed, 106 people detained during operations by the security services linked to 3 suicide bombings in the capital, Kampala, last week. Islamic State, which is allied with anti-Uganda rebel group Allied Democratic Forces, claimed responsibility for the November 16 attack, which killed 7 people, including the 3 bombers, and injured dozens more. 1 police officer was among the 4 others killed, and 27 out of 37 wounded were also police officers. Police said in a statement posted on Facebook, "To disrupt and dismantle acts of domestic terrorism, we have intensified operations. Since these operations began, a total of 106 suspects have been arrested." Police did not provide details on how these 7 suspects were killed. In last week's attack, a suicide bomber blew himself up at the entrance of a police station at the center of Kampala. 3 minutes later, 2 other suicide bombers exploded along a road that leads to the parliament. At least 6 people, including 4 school children, were killed and scores missing after a ferry capsized in eastern Sri Lanka today. Sri Lanka Navy officials and divers conducted a search and rescue operation after the incident. A Navy spokesperson said the ferry was traveling from Kurinchakine to the town of Kinia along the country's eastern coast. The Navy said 17 people had been rescued so far and 5 bodies were found. The boat can carry between 25 to 35 people. The World Health Organization continues to draw concern over the rising COVID cases in Europe. Countries are still adopting measures to help keep the numbers down. Here's a global update.
The World Health Organization says the European region remains in the firm grip of the coronavirus pandemic, with reported daily deaths rising to almost 4,200 a day, double the 2,100 deaths a day at the end of September. Reported deaths from the virus have already passed the 1.5 million mark for the 53 countries that make up the WHO European region. Based on current trends, The WHO say the cumulative reported deaths are projected to reach more than 2.2 million by March next year. Germany's health minister, Jens Spahn, has given a stark warning, saying that by the end of the winter, everyone in Germany will be vaccinated, recovered or dead, with infection rate at the highest level since the pandemic began. The UK government has updated its guidance to recommend people in England take a rapid lateral flow test before going to high-risk settings such as crowded areas ahead of Christmas or visiting people at higher risk of severe illness from COVID-19. French Prime Minister Jean Castex says he's doing well after contracting COVID and experiencing only mild symptoms. The politician writes on Twitter that he's continuing to carry out his official duties from self-isolation. His office confirmed on Monday that Castex, who is fully vaccinated, had tested positive and was isolating. And finally, Israel has started vaccinating 5 to 11-year-olds, hoping to beat down a recent rise in coronavirus infections.
Oh, we're slowly coasting home now. U.S. shoppers are gearing up for Black Friday, which kicks off the key holiday shopping period. It's a day after Thanksgiving. News has been mostly good for retailers in recent months as a vaccine-fueled U.S. reopening sent shoppers back into stores. But global supply chain bottlenecks are crimping inventories and pushing up prices remain a worry. Soaring inflation also has markets worried about consumers tightening their belts. Inflation fears also persist in markets after recent comments from Federal Reserve officials suggesting that price measures were becoming more broad-based. But recent retail sales numbers made for happier reading this time round, showing October sales surging as Americans start shopping early to beat supply shortages.
The big month-long Black November or Black Week just isn't landing. Consumers are getting tired of Black Fridays that last more than a day. They last a week, they last a month. We've had the same thing in the UK where Boxing Day sales have turned into January sales. That used to be just December the 26th. Now it's an entire month of January. So big, long Black Fridays, people are getting bored of that. There's been a lot of concern that Black Friday this year, consumers wouldn't go to physical retail stores. This would be a much more online thing. Consumers might be scared to go to retailers or to Main Street, but a big majority, 65% of consumers say that they aren't at all worried about changing their shopping behavior in the holiday period or even in the Black Friday or Black November period.
Well, if you didn't know it, we're already in the Christmas season. Copenhagen's Tivoli's amusement park on Saturday lit its Christmas tree, as well as 1 million lights to mark the beginning of the Christmas season. Beautiful, isn't it? After almost 2 years of being deprived of normal life, this year's theme is togetherness, closeness and love, and it's being illustrated all around Tivoli with hearts. Normally, about 1 million people visit Tivoli during the Christmas season, but last year it had to close just after 2 weeks because of the COVID pandemic. But that's not all, because altogether 1 million lights decorate the amusement park in the center of Copenhagen. As some 1,000 spruce trees have been decked out with fairy lights from top to toe with 3.5 kilometers of spruce garlands, 40 kilometers of Christmas tree chains, 20,000 hyacinths and 70,000 Christmas baubles bring some sparkle to what is said to be the second oldest amusement park in the world. It was founded in 1843. Something to bring the Christmas cheer into your evening. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.